The not going home hospital took my parents and now wants my brother. Greetings and welcome back to your daily dose of scary stories from r/nosleep. Relax with your favorite drink as this is about to get so spooky, it will send chills up your spine. Before we start, if you have some scary personal experiences that you want to share, feel free to email them to me. Let's get started. The hospital near where we live has an ugly reputation. Its official name is Nottingham General Hospital, NGH, but everyone calls it Not Going Home. The building is out of date, the staff either too new or too burned out, and even the lights seem to struggle to shine. If you're dying, it's a good enough place to die faster, but if you're hoping to recover, you should keep driving. That's why, despite living less than 30 from NGH, we take my brother Eddie to the big city hospital 3 hours away for his chemo. Besides the air of misery, there are other, darker things I've heard about Nottingham. They say even small sicknesses can blossom into something fatal there. They say the halls are haunted, that there's blood in the food and that the dead dance in the morgue at night. I'm sure it's all bullshit, but I have to admit, even driving past the place, there's a wrongness to the tall building, like a dirty scar on the skyline. There was another reason I avoided NGH. It was where both of my parents died, less than a year ago, and less than an hour apart. I would do anything I could to keep my family away from Nottingham, but last week Eddie developed a cough that turned into a wet choking in less than a day. We had no choice but to rush him to NGH's emergency room. Pneumonia. Eddie was touch and go for a few days. Ben and I stayed in the room with him the whole time, sleeping on the chairs. I appreciated that the doctors didn't chase us out after visiting hours. I doubted the hospital got that many visitors in the first place, so maybe the staff appreciated the company. On the 4th day, we took Eddie home. The docs wanted to keep him another day for observation, but he'd stabilized and we'd had our fill of the place. All of us had nightmares every night we stayed at Nottingham. I didn't ask Eddie and Ben what they dreamed about. For me, it was 2 dreams that played on repeat. The first nightmare was about a doctor walking slowly down a hallway towards me, fluorescent lights above flickering out and dying as he came. The man was dressed in stained green scrubs. I could never see the doctor's face, the lights kept cutting out just in front of him. I could smell him, though, the sick sweet scent of industrial ammonia, hints of copper, and rotting meat. I always woke up just as the doctor got ready to walk into Eddie's room. In the second dream, I walked down a long staircase. There was a door, and I didn't want to open it, but I couldn't stop. The door led to the morgue, and I saw my parents' bodies both laid out on cold, stainless steel tables. They were naked and each had a raw, red Y-shape cut into their chest and stomach, fresh stitches barely holding the cut together. It's how I imagine they must have looked after their autopsies. Both of them died in the same car accident, my dad as soon as they got to the hospital, my mom not even 10 minutes after. The 2 of them were on a date, the first they'd taken in probably a year. Eddie being so sick for so long was hard on my family, but my parents in particular. It seemed so unfair. All mom and dad wanted was one night for themselves. A bad tire and a patch of ice later, and they were gone. Ben came home from college after the accident. Somebody needed to watch over Eddie and me while we finished school. In 2 years, I'll be done with high school and I can do more to help, maybe take turns with Eddie so Ben can pick up some classes. We were making shit up as we went, but we were together, at least. When we got home from the hospital after Eddie's ER visit, as soon as Ben opened the door, Maggie tackled us like a gray gold cannonball. "Did you miss us?" Eddie asked, still a little short of breath. Maggie wagged her tail and pressed her head against Eddie's. Her fur was faded from the years, but when I looked at her, I saw the same puppy my parents brought home the week Eddie was born. Ben and I had demanded a dog for years, and mom and dad thought it would be nice for Eddie and Maggie to grow up together. "No roughhousing," Ben said, doing his best to sound stern. I couldn't tell if he was talking to Eddie or Maggie, but they both did their best to look chastened. "You got to take care of yourself, Eddie. You're still on the mend." Eddie, looking bony and tired, still managed to grin. "I'm the picture of health." We couldn't help but grin at him. Then he coughed. Ben had the car keys out and my arm was halfway back through my jacket before Eddie talked us down. "Just a tickle in my throat," he promised. We slowly relaxed. Even Maggie looked concerned, big brown eyes fixed on Eddie. "Hey," Eddie asked, sounding scared for the first time in I don't know how long. "Has anyone seen my lantern?" He began frantically going through his pockets. Eddie's panic infected the rest of us. Ben was about to drive back to the hospital, ready to tear the place apart, when I noticed a lump in the inner pocket of my sweater. "Eddie, I've got it," I said, pulling out the object. "I picked it up from your nightstand when we were leaving the hospital, just to be sure we wouldn't forget it." The lantern was a keychain, a miniature version of the lamppost from the Chronicles of Narnia. It was scaled down to fit in your palm, copper cast and solar powered, so if you left it in the sun for a few hours it could produce a weak glow at night. It was the last gift my mom gave Eddie before she passed. The chemo was taking a toll on him, months of it, a life-saving poison that burned up body and soul. In one of the worst stretches, my mom gave him the little lantern. She quoted Tolkien, told Eddie to let the lantern be a light in dark places when all other lights go out. Mom, Eddie, and Ben all loved their fantasy. I took after my dad, not so much a daydreamer, but I knew there was power in stories. Eddie took the keychain from me and hugged me close. "Thanks, Liz." He cupped his hands around it, put his eye close. Eddie looked up, disappointed. "There's no light," he said. "I think it needs some sun." I moved a strand of hair out of his face. "Yeah, I don't think we got enough sunshine at the hospital." Even on bright days, Eddie's hospital room, the whole damn building even, seemed to stay in the shade. "Put the lantern on your windowsill and leave the blinds up tomorrow." "Speaking of light," said Ben, walking into the dining room, "would you like to fire up the candles, Ed?" Eddie sprinted after Ben so fast I was surprised the little guy didn't give the floor a friction burn. I smiled as I watched them both duck into the other room on the way to the den, Maggie on their heels. I followed after, at my own pace. We kept Mom and Dad's ashes in wooden urns on the mantel. Mom was in maple, Dad was in cherry. Next to each urn, we kept a candle that reminded us of them. For Mom, it was cinnamon. Her season was always wintered. Mom put so much effort into organizing the perfect Christmas song playlist every December we used to joke she should DJ as a side hustle. Dad's candle was the ocean. He'd lived for the trips we'd taken as a family to the shore for fireworks in July. Even after Eddie got sick we still managed one last trip to the boardwalk together that summer. We light those candles every night and it makes it easier to remember Mom and Dad. Cinnamon and sea salt, first snow, and summer sand. When the smells fill the house, it's almost like we're all together again. There's gravity in those moments that keep our memories from drifting too far away. Ben, Eddie, and me, and Maggie, spent the rest of the day making sugar cookies and watching Lord of the Rings for the millionth time. Eddie made it most of the way through Two Towers before falling asleep on my shoulder. I didn't want to disturb him, so Ben and I stayed in the den. We both must have nodded off right around when the orcs dragged Frodo, and Sam went to follow. I was woken up by a knock at the door. Eddie was still sleeping on the couch next to me. Ben was stirring, he was as light a sleeper like me. Maggie was nowhere to be seen. But I could hear her in the other room. She was growling, softly. The knock came again. Ben looked at the clock above the TV. "Little late. Are you expect?" he began to ask me. He stopped when we heard the front door open and close. "It was locked," I whispered to him, standing up. Maggie came backing into the room, still growling. She was facing the dining room, which connected to the foyer. "What's huh?" Eddie asked, still half asleep. Ben and I were both standing now. We'd put the candles out but forgotten to turn off the light in the den while we were watching the movies. The dining room and the rest of the house were dark. "Is someone there?" Ben called out, taking a step towards the other room. No one answered. The smell of ammonia and rot washed over me and I nearly retched. "Jesus," Ben gagged, covering his mouth. I felt Eddie grab my hand and squeeze. I squeezed back. Maggie began to growl louder. The den lights were weakening my night vision, but I thought I caught the shadow of a man next to the dining table. "If someone's there, you better go," Ben continued. "We called the police, already. And we're armed." Maggie barked. "And we have a dog. And she has fucking rabies, so fuck off." We stood in silence. The shadow in the other room moved closer. "You left," a voice whispered. "Too early. Still need help." There was something wrong with the dark in the dining room. It wasn't gradual darkness, lighter near the den and shadier further back. Instead, the gloom was almost solid, hanging like a curtain between the two rooms. A hand reached out from that blackness, followed by an arm. The hand was covered by a dirty latex glove. The arm was wrapped in stained green scrubs. It pointed at Eddie. "Come back," it said, voice hushed. Sick. Svith. Hospital." "Get the fuck out of our house," Ben whispered. It was still pointed at Eddie. "Give." Maggie snarled. Ben stood a little straighter. "Not going to happen," he said. The lights in the den flickered, then went out completely. Ben shouted and Maggie yelped. I froze. The lights came back, but they were dimmer, like they were dying. Ben was still at the threshold between the den and the dining room. He had his hands up like a boxer. There were fresh scratches and cuts all over both arms, and something had torn the collar of his shirt. He was breathing heavily. Maggie had lost some fur and there was a small streak of red on her side. She was favoring one of her paws but still standing. They were both still standing between me and Eddie and whatever was in the other room. The gloved hand reached out of the darkness again. There were bright red splotches visible against the faded white latex. "Give," it said, pointing at Eddie. "Fuck. You," Ben replied. Maggie growled. It sounded like she was agreeing with him. The two of them made an unusual pair. Ben, my skinny big brother, was wearing green flannel pajamas and an old Radiohead t-shirt. Maggie was so old we had to carry her up and down the stairs every night so she could sleep in Eddie's room. But seeing them standing there, they looked like giants to me. I wouldn't have traded the two of them for a platoon of Marines. I knew that whatever followed us wasn't getting to Eddie without a fight. The lights flickered again and I screamed, nearly choking on the smell of ammonia and old blood. It was like the darkness in the other room was oil, slowly flooding the rest of the house. The thing's arm reached a little farther, coming out to the shoulder. Shadows in the dining room were pulled with it, like fabric stretching. I was terrified that the stretching would continue until something ripped and then it would be in here with us. "Please, God," I whispered. "Please." I felt Eddie squeeze my hand. A moment later, he pressed something small and metal into my palm. I turned to look at him. "It'll be okay," he whispered to me. "I won't let anything hurt you." I opened my hand. Eddie had given me his charm, his lantern on a keychain. I felt all of the fear drain out of me. There wasn't enough room in my heart for fear, it was overfilled with a fierce love for my brave little brother, for my entire family. Love was so animated hurt. I turned to Eddie and smiled. He looked so small in the low light, so fragile. The cancer had taken its cut of him, the treatment has taken as much or more. But, like Ben and Maggie, Eddie was still standing. My poor brother, all of us, we'd been through so much hell over the past few years. It wasn't fair for some nightmare to chase us home, to try to take more from Eddie than the bill the world had already called in. No more fear, then. But there was room in me for at least one other emotion besides love. I looked at the arm reaching out from the dark and I felt rage. How dare this thing come into our house, hurt my family, come calling for my brother? How? Fucking dare it? The lights flickered again. Then everything was black, but only for a moment. The room lit up with a blue-white brilliance. I felt warmth in my hand. The light was coming from Eddie's lantern. I could see my brothers and Maggie. There was a hidden shape, tall and crooked, caught between the two rooms, right on the other side of Ben and Maggie. There were two other shadows in the den with my family, standing next to Eddie and me. I could smell cinnamon. There was a chill in the room, but pleasant, like the first cool night in the winter. The cinnamon faded and was replaced with the scent of the ocean, and my hair stirred in a warm summer breeze. I began to walk towards the blackness in the dining room. The two familiar shadows walked with me. "Leave," I said. "Never come back." There was a swelling pressure and then it was like the world exhaled. All of the shadows were gone and I was alone in the house with my brothers and our dog. Ben and Eddie were staring at me. Even Maggie looked confused. "Was that?" Ben started to ask, trailing off. "Yeah," Eddie answered. "It was." The smell of cinnamon and the ocean was gone, but they were easy to recall if I closed my eyes. I glanced down at the miniature lamp keychain. The brightness was now a soft bluish glow. I smiled and brought the charm back to Eddie. "We have to remember to leave this on the windowsill tomorrow, so it can catch some sun. You never know when we'll need a little light. We'll never go back to that hospital." We decided to use some of the money Mom and Dad left us to move. I heard a rumor from a friend of a friend about an unusually lucky neighborhood a few towns over. The area isn't just fortunate, this is a place where sometimes sick people get better. There's supposed to be some weirdness there, too, but I'm finding that my family has a high tolerance for weirdness these days. If things ever go bad, we'll always have Eddie's lantern. And I know none of us will ever face the dark alone. I hope you enjoyed listening to this story. Don't forget to hit the like button. What do you think about this story? What did you feel while listening to this? Let us know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this. Hit the notification bell to make sure you never miss an upload.